Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the Cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure?
It's cultist coffee.
What makes it Cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office. Welcome to the morning grind. I'm Heath. I'll be your host this morning. I hope everybody is doing great. I hope everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I went out yesterday to have lunch with the family. And then after that, I actually unexpectedly got to go play Hero Quest with all the nephews. I happened to have it in my truck, so I had everything necessary to play Hero Quest. So after that, went over to see the nephews at my brother's house. My brother and 3 nephews all played Hero Quest. They played, which one was it that we played? Was it Quest 6 or something? It's right before the one where you get captured. So they played, that was either 5 or 6. So I think we may have just played Quest 6. So we had a great time with that, and it went pretty well. I'm anxious to go and play some more. We've got tons of Hero Quest to play. I was showing them that, hey, you're now about halfway through the main box, but I got expansions after expansions after expansions. We could play Hero Quest, I don't know, for every day for the next half a year and not run out of Hero Quest. So it was a good day. So who have we got here? Stray. Good morning. Stray. And Micah, I'm very glad Micah's here. Micah's got, I'm sure, lots of great input on this. Micah's been at the forefront, along with Ian at the role of law, of course. But Micah here on this channel has been at the forefront of the orc situation, the orc licensing situation. Good morning, Tomocrat. Good morning. And Micah's, I completely blew NaNoWriMo. I did not want to do that, but I completely blew it. 50 words from 50K. Congratulations. Congratulations. Here's to you. I'm running out of drink this morning, so I might have to fill back up. But here's to you, Micah, for that success. Please do hit the like button if you're here. If you're here, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Would love that. Hit the like button. There might be people out there lonely this Friday, this Black Friday, who are here on YouTube right now and would love to be here and join us. And they just don't know we're here because the algorithm isn't pushing it out. Maybe if we hit the like button, more people will find us. Good morning, BGD. And PH Arbex and James, we're all here. Zero the Blade is here. Tomocrat. All right. Robert, man, we've got the whole crew here together this morning. All right. No, I did not get to play 10 Candles. Didn't get to play 10 Candles. It wouldn't have been right to play. We're going to have to get more of the adults together to play 10 Candles and prep the whole situation. I didn't have 10 Candles ready, but I did have Hero Quest in the car. All right, let's see what's going on here. So yesterday I did go ahead and publish on the Table Talk channel, Mark Tassin's, my discussion with Mark Tassin. We're kind of coming up to what I call the modern era, catching up to what I call the modern era of Table Talk. That's moving some of the older episodes from this channel over to the dedicated Table Talk channel. So last night, and I wasn't here for it because I was playing Hero Quest, but last night I went ahead and aired Mark Tassin's Cool Name. I had it scheduled. Discussion with the Cool Name RPG, but actually this is probably an important conversation too, because it was the OGL debacle was the reason that Mark Tassin decided to develop the Cool Name RPG and brought the Cool Name RPG to Kickstarter and has been going and developing all of the new rules to make a completely community-owned RPG. And so I've been following that here on this channel. I know several of us have. Several of us had backed the Kickstarter and been following all of that. So once we get more rules and stuff, we will also go back and take a look at the Cool Name RPG, because it sounds like one of the rules, one of the systems that we might be able to use over here, because I've been skeptical of orc, that now I've become skeptical of the orc license as a result of everything that we have been reading here. And I want to be able to do something for Pathfinder 2nd edition, but might have to do it through the OGL kind of rules. We'll just through the OGL license and what's available for the OGL. I guess we'll just have to see. But another solution is Mark Tassin's Cool Name RPG. So that's going over here. That was just published on the Table Talk channel right here. So please join over there. If you did not see, is it going to give me the preview over here? Yes. Okay. Napoleon. I'm going to go see Napoleon tonight. That's the plan. The plan is to go see Napoleon tonight. So if you want to join us for the Napoleon discussion, I have intentionally not watched any reviews, and I'm not going to. Before we talk on Tuesday. So I haven't watched anything about Napoleon other than the first trailer that came out a few months ago, whenever that was. I watched the trailer and then I was like, oh, I definitely have to go see the Napoleon movie. So this is one I've been excited about more than other movies in a long time right here. So, I mean, I hope it's good. I hope it's good. So if you would like to see the movie and join the discussion, we're going to be having the discussion. Doug and I are going to be talking about Napoleon in 4 days. So that's on Tuesday. So tonight, I'm planning on going and seeing it tonight. Going out with a friend tonight to go and see Napoleon. That is the plan. Micah says, there is enough to play Cool Name RPG, though it isn't fully fleshed out as desired for the breadth of situations many might want outside of combat. Still enough, but more improvement. Yeah, it's not finished yet. It's not finished yet. There is more to come. We have taken a look at what was out there. And as more comes out, I should be following it. We will continue to look more at it here. Yes, roll for Turco. We are reviewing Ian's Elf license. Yep, that's our main topic for today. So that's it. Good to see you here. With the rules of Orc, it completely changes how I have to think about my tabletop RPG projects and which licenses I can use. I can completely. Oh, James can go see Napoleon on Sunday. So yeah, so did I post the, oh yeah, post the link. So if you want to hit there, go over to the Table Talk channel. hit the notify me. That's on the Table Talk channel. It's not on this channel. It's on the Table Talk channel. So Napoleon in 4 days. The Cultists, I have been really impressed with what's been going on with the Cultists over there. Stray just posted that link. The Cultist, if you're new here, The Cultist is my web show. It's a mockumentary comedy. It's a mockumentary about modern day Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. And I was noticing we had some more people coming in. We got, I don't have the thing to look right here, how many came in yesterday. But we've gotten 30 or 40 new subscribers over there. And so I'm really going to hit the Cultists hard right after the Trial of St. Gabriel. And by the way, the Trial of St. Gabriel, this is my dark short story of the Bethlehem Christmas Massacre. I was sending out, if you're subscribed to the channel, actually, if you're a member of the channel, I sent out the entire story to everyone who is a member of the channel because I appreciate you guys so much. Was that yesterday or the day before? May have been the day before. Yeah, I guess I didn't do anything yesterday because it was Thanksgiving. So it would have been the day before. I posted to the community tab for members only, and I went ahead and sent you the entire short story. It's a short story, but the entire short story, I sent that out. So we're going to do a discussion of this on December 5th on Table Talk, as with a discussion of the entire Christmas story, so the biblical Christmas story, and then also my interpretation of it. So you have it. If you were a member of the channel, you now have the entire story. And then I sent out a preview of the entire story to everyone who was just subscribed to the channel. So if you were subscribed, you should have gotten the note. Should have. I mean, I don't know if you saw it or not. But typically, I think on mobile devices, you see the community posts. So I sent out a preview of this story to everyone via the community tab Wednesday as well. I got to send out more stuff about this, and then we're going to launch and we're going to do it. I also got notification that my hard copy proof has printed, and it is shipped. So as soon as we get here, we'll also on the Morning Grind take a look at the preview of the story again and also verify that the proof is printed correctly. Hopefully it was. This is the first time I'd ever laid out one according to this format. It's not a difficult format, but I had to, everything was so hacky to get Good Night Sword ready. Then this one's a different format, and it should have gone easier, but it was the first time I'd actually done one from the ground up. So hopefully I get everything right. So we will see. Oh, Tomocrat says, going to start reading it today. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Tomocrat. Interested to know what you think. So let's see. So that's what's going on there. Oh, and I just want to post this right here. I posted the link here earlier, but let me post this again. If you are looking for Ian Runkles' channel, The Role of Law. Now, he is the guy who is developing the ELF license. So if you are not subscribed to his channel, please go over here and check out his channel. This is The Role of Law, because he's got stuff on the ORC license, The Role of Law, the ORC license, Live Lawyer Review, Paizo and the ORC license, the ELF license draft review. I mean, he's got other stuff as well. A lawyer explains the ORC license, but specifically on this topic, the ORC license and the ELF license. He's developing the ELF license, and you'll find information on his channel for both of those. So there you go. All right, let's go over. Let me take this down. Let's begin our sacraments before we get to the main topic this morning. Got your drink? I just have a little bit left here. So here we go. Everybody got your favorite beverage this morning? Got your favorite beverage close at hand? I hope you do. I've got some Coke here, some Coke Zero that I think has been sitting here since last night. So, okay, I guess it'll work. So we're going to take this. Let's see. So everybody, let's take 2 deep breaths, complete inhales, complete exhales, and then take a sip of your favorite beverage. Everybody together. This is the mental health portion of the show. Just time to slow down for a second. Reflect for just a moment. Everybody needs it. So everybody together, let's breathe. And sip. All right. And now for our second sacrament this morning. This is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is our brief reading. If you're here new, we've been going through The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield because so many of us are people who are actually trying to accomplish things in the world. and create our own stuff. So we're reading The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And so here is our reading for the day. The difference between territory and hierarchy. How can we tell if our orientation is territorial or hierarchical? One way is to ask ourselves, if we were feeling really anxious, what would we do? What would I do? What would we pick up? Let me say that again. One way is to ask ourselves, if I were feeling really anxious, what would I do? If we would pick up the phone and call friends one after another with the aim of hearing their voices and reassuring under ourselves that they still love us, we are operating hierarchically. We're seeking the good opinions of others. What would Arnold Schwarzenegger do on a freaky day? He wouldn't phone his buddies. He'd head to the gym. He wouldn't care if the place was empty, if he didn't say a word to a soul. He knew that working out all by himself is enough to bring him back to his center. His orientation is territorial. Here's another test. Of an activity you do, ask yourself, if I were the last person on Earth, would I still do it? If you're all alone on the planet, a hierarchical orientation makes no sense. There's no one to impress. If you'd still pursue that activity, congratulations. You're doing it territorially. If Arnold Schwarzenegger were the last man on Earth, he'd still go to the gym. Stevie Wonder would still pound the piano. The sustenance they get from the act itself, not from the impression it makes on others. I have a friend who's nuts for clothes. If she were the last woman on Earth, she would shoot straightway to Givenchy or St. Laurent, smash her way in and start pillaging. In her case, it wouldn't be to impress others. She just loves clothes. That's her territory. Now, what about ourselves as artists? How do we work? How do we do our work, hierarchically or territorially? If we were freaked out, what would we go first? Or would we go there first? If we were the last person on Earth, would we still show up at the studio, the rehearsal hall, or the laboratory? I like that. I like that a lot. All right. Oh, Tomocrat says, has Runkle said if he would come to the morning grind sometime soon? Yeah, now it'll probably be table talk. It'll probably be table talk. It would be great if he would show up if we suddenly saw him in the comments here. But I put on the Discord server that I'd love to have him, but I wanted to take a look at the ELF license first. That way everybody can take a look at it and actually know what it is before we have a discussion. That way we don't have to spend our time. I think it's a good system generally with authors and creatives, because that way we don't have to spend our time when that person's on going over all the basics. We'll already know the basics because we've looked at the whole thing. And then so he said that he would be down for a discussion. So we'll do it on Table Talk, I think. I don't know. I don't know. We will see. PH says, I love making up RPG systems, but with no one else in the world, it would be a sad activity. All right, let's bring up the ELF license then. Where did it go? Oh, right here. I feel a little bit stuffy in the nose today, so sorry if you can hear that during the reading. Let's see. There. All right. ELF license. Everybody see that? Okay. Draft only. ELF license. This license, hereinafter referred to as the ELF license, grants the right to use licensed content subject to the terms and conditions set forth and referenced as below. Oh, look who it is. So Ian is in the chat. So fantastic. We have him in the chat. Roll of Law says, happy to answer questions. I'll note this is not the final version. Right now it's off for an independent legal review by an experienced tabletop RPG lawyer. Oh, okay, fantastic. So it's getting an external and independent review as well. Okay. So 1, definitions. A, product identity means trademarks, trade dress, and non-functional and creative expressions that are not essential to or can be varied without altering the ideas or methods of operation of the game, including the works of visual art, music and sound design, clearly expressed and sufficiently delineated characters, character organizations, dialogue, settings, location, worlds, plots, or storylines, including proper nouns and adjectives, names and titles derived from proper nouns. The term product identity shall in no event include elements that are exclusive property of one or more third parties, or they're in the public domain. So this is product identity. This is the stuff that you are supposed to be keeping. Trademarks, trade dress. I mean, we've seen several of this language before here that are not essential to, or can be varied without altering, the ideas, methods, and operations of a game. That's what we're trying to protect. ELF licensed content means 1, any material that has been expressly designated by yourself or a previous, I believe that may just supposed to be a licensor right there, designated by yourself or a previous licensor as constituting ELF licensed content. You must have the rights to the content to designate new content as ELF licensed content. ELF licensed content specifically excludes product identity unless you specify otherwise. So those are our two big categories here. Here are our big categories here. They're ELF licensed content and product identity. And it's specifically, so this is already a change. So ELF licensed content specifically excludes anything that is product identity unless you specify otherwise. And I remember when we were talking about the orc, it was kind of the other way, right? It was saying that you specify what your product identity is. Because in the orc, you have to specify what your product, they call it reserved content, what your reserved content is. But in the event that there is any kind of discrepancy between what you specify as your reserved content and what the orc says is licensed material, the definition of licensed material under the orc takes precedence. Good morning, TSL Frontman. Good morning. Roll of Law says, some parts are copied from the orc with the express permission of Azora Law. No point reinventing the wheel, but I want the license to function differently. Right, and we did talk about that the other day as well, saying that one difference between the orc and the OGL is that the OGL is is copyright by Wizards of the Coast, whereas Azora Law allows, and Paizo allows the orc license itself to be more open, and I was hearing you talk about that in one of your videos. Orc also by default excludes product identity, but you can include it if you want. But yes, correct. The orc has the definition takes precedence thing, which is weird. Now, I will say, so my question, we did have this up here, so going up here. So product identity means trademarks, trade dress, and non-functional and creative expressions. Okay, so specifically we're talking about non-functional, so creative expressions that are not essential to or can be varied without altering. So I think that what had come up with that when we were discussing the orc in days past here on the Morning Grind, we had a great discussion about, by the way, if you're new here, we had a great discussion on the Morning Grind about the orc itself for about 4 days. So if you want to hear that conversation, they are available on the channel. But this needs to be more than just text, right? Because if you say, hey, can this be varied without altering? There may be various different expressions of rules mechanics. So if I look at a very specific sentence that's describing some type of rules mechanic, can that creative expression be varied without altering the methods or operation of the game? Possibly, because there are a lot of ways to say things. There are a lot of ways to vary a sentence to say the same thing. So possibly, I have that question about how that's supposed to work. How am I supposed to delineate? Yes, you could vary this sentence and communicate the exact same mechanic, but we're supposed to be granting rights to that expression, right? That expression, yeah, it's so right. So I guess I'm saying, if you're looking at an expression of a mechanic, yes, it could be varied, but I want you to actually be able to use that expression. That was the genius of the OGL and the SRD. Micah says, which, as I brought up on Wednesday's morning grind, we both wanted struck out because it can't function with the orc license ambiguities. Micah says. Okay, so original elf content. Original elf content means content you have licensed under the elf license. You have licensed under the elf license. This is a subset of the larger set of elf content, and therefore any content that is original elf content is also elf licensed content. Makes sense? So this is the stuff that you are contributing to the elf in that particular work. You may have gotten elf content from a licensor up above you. Designated elf content means new or adapted content that you have designated as elf licensed content to contribute to the pool of elf licensed content, which may be licensed by others as original elf content. This is a subset of the larger set of elf licensed content, and therefore any content that is designated elf content is also elf licensed content. New or adapted content you have licensed. Okay, Roll of Law says the reason for the exclusion is to make it so there's basically 2 levels of permission over a block of text. So basically a safety measure. If you license out pages 20 to 24 through the ELF license, it still holds back those product identity unless you take the further step of saying including the product identity. So so that's a failback safety. So right, so this license is keeping you is keeping things protected unless so designated, whereas the orc is keeping things open unless so designated. So you can say, even if there is product identity in pages 20 through 40, you can say 20 through 40 is licensed under the ELF, which automatically excludes anything that is yours. I like the idea. See, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about this, but that relationship, going back to that idea in the orc about the definition of open license takes precedence over anything that you might designate as reserved. And in a certain sense, it has to be there if you're going to do it in that way. And I wish I had this picture handy. I keep forgetting to bring it up. But where, and I think it was in a Monty Cook book, where in the license for the OGL, it specifically said that all game mechanics are product identity. So he says that like he's using the OGL, but oh, by the way, I'm designating all of my game mechanics as product identity, which seems to be counter to the spirit of what was going on there. So with the orc, it would prevent him from doing that. You can't say, hey, my game mechanics and my expressions of my game mechanics are my reserved material. The orc would forbid that because it's going to say any conflict between what you say is reserved and the definition of what is open licensed material, the definition takes precedence. So even if you tried to say, hey, my game rules are my reserved material, the orc would override that. But it does so in a majorly ambiguous way, we found. And also, and because of that, it makes much more sense to just say the only things that are open are what you declare as open. That solves the situation. Rather than trying to go down we're forcing certain things to be open, whether you want them to be or not, and you have to make sure that you're right with all the ambiguity, we're just going to say that we're going to reverse that and say anything that is open only if you specifically declare it's open. And as Ian is saying here, with 2 levels of protection on any particular passage. Micah says, right. And as we all know, mechanics themselves can't be copyrighted, just the expression, which is the reason for the OGL, CC4 BY, ORC license, and the ELF license to exist. Robert says, so I suppose my question about ELF would be the same as ORC. So this sounds like a great question for Ian at the moment. Can ELF be used in conjunction with the OGL? Oh, James says, I believe so. Ian has commented on this on his own channel. I think even elf can be used in conjunction with orc. I think that was right. I think I was reading that. Anyone can rephrase and use the same concept mechanically, but not copying the original text without license or fair dealing if befitting a case that matches the definition is given for a given territory. Wait, let me say that again. Anyone can rephrase and use the same concept mechanically, but not copying the original text without license or fair use or fair dealing if befitting a case that matches the definition for a given territory. Role of Law says, basically, it's a one-way thing. You can take elf content and put it into a work that has other OGL material, but you can't take OGL material and license it further under elf. This is basically because the elf is designated to work with other licenses, but the orc OGL are designed to be hostile to other licenses. The same idea was brought up earlier with the orc license, in that you'd have to dual license, and those downstream would have to, but that you can't take from one license into another, but other non-conflicting licenses can work together. Role of Law says, that said, mixing licenses is getting into legally hazardous areas. Unlike the orc, I do not advertise the elf as a you do not need a lawyer license. No such thing. Okay, so copyright and similar rights means copyright and other similar rights closely related to copyright, including, without limitation, performance, broadcast, sound recording, and sui generis database rights, without regard to how the rights are labeled or categorized. In no event shall copyright or similar rights include trademark or patent rights. F, effective technology measures, meaning those measures that in the absence of proper authority may be circumvented under laws fulfilling obligations under Article 11 of the WIPO Copyright Treaty, adopted on December 20th, 1996, and or similar international agreements. Licensed rights means the rights granted to you subject to the terms and conditions of this ELF license, which are limited to all copyright and similar rights that apply to your use of the ELF content and that the licensor has authority to license. Licensor means any individual or entity granting rights under this ELF license. Sui generis database rights means rights other than copyright resulting from Directive 96/9/EC of the European Parliament and of the Council of 11 March 1996 on the legal protection of databases, as amended or succeeded, as well as other essentially equivalent rights anywhere in the world. J, term means the term of copyright and similar rights licensed herein. Use or used means to use material or by any means or process that requires permission under the licensed right, such as production, reproduction, creation of derivative works, public display, public performance, distribution, dissemination, communication, or importation, and to make material available to the public, including in ways that members of the public may access the material from a place and at a time individually chosen by them. You and your means the individual or entity exercising rights granted under this ELF license. And then we get into the meat of it, which is grants and limitations. So Robert says, so I couldn't declare something open under both ELF and OGL in the same work. What if it were brand new? James says, provided what we've all read within the orc, the whole don't need a lawyer thing seems a bit sneaky. Micah is nodding to Robert. If you created it, you could. It would be better to release 2 copies, one for each. Yeah, so you could do that. You could have 2 completely separate copies of the work and say one is licensed under ELF and one is licensed under OGL. And then somebody downstream could choose which one they want to use. Now, that is something that Evil Hat does, right? Evil Hat does that for the Fate system. It does dual licensing for Fate. I remember on its website that you can use, I believe it's the Creative Commons BY 4.0 license, CC BY. Or you can use OGL. But I don't think it tries to dual license the same document. I think that's trying to do what Micah's talking about here. Here's the Fate rules. We license it under both. You pick which one. If you want to use the Fate material, you use which one is most appropriate to your use cases and that you're most comfortable with. You can if you create it, but it creates issues for the downstream. Yeah, if you want somebody to be able to choose which license they use, if you're comfortable with them using either license, then put out in both documents. Hey, if you're here, please do hit the like button. Okay, so grants and limitations. Primary grant to you. Subject to the terms and conditions of this ELF license, for the term, licensor hereby grants to you a worldwide, royalty-free, non-exclusive, irrevocable license to exercise the licensed rights in the ELF licensed content, to use the ELF licensed content in whole or in part. So that's the main part. That's what we've been trying to get to. You get a worldwide, royalty-free, non-exclusive, irrevocable license to exercise the licensed rights. I guess that's over the ELF licensed content, and to use the ELF licensed content in whole or in part. Licensor hereby authorizes you to exercise the licensed rights in all media and formats, whether now known or hereafter created, and to make technical modifications necessary to do so. Licensor hereby waives and agrees not to assert any right or authority to forbid you from making technical modifications necessary to exercise the licensed rights, including technical modifications necessary to circumvent effective technological measures. You are granted the right to sublicense the ELF content on exactly the same terms as in this agreement. And I remember on the videos talking about this means something like if you create something and you license it, but it's DRM'd, you can break the DRM in order to get to the licensed content. Grant of ELF content by you. You hereby grant to any recipient of the work containing the ELF content a license to use the original ELF licensed content and any ELF licensed content specifically designated by you under the terms and conditions of this agreement as designated ELF content. Okay, this is saying you hereby grant to any recipient of the work containing the ELF license a license to use the original ELF licensed content and any ELF licensed content specifically designated by you under the terms and conditions of this agreement as designated ELF content. You may not offer or impose any additional or different terms or conditions on the ELF licensed content that you have licensed, or apply any effective technological measures to the original ELF content if doing so restricts exercise of the licensed rights to any of the recipient of the ELF licensed content. I want to go back to this, but we'll go ahead and say, for clarity, it will not be a breach of this agreement to apply effective technological measures to the content if the content is also provided in the same work or the same distribution without effective technological measures. Okay, so am I right in saying this is like a pass-through? This is the pass-through deal, right? You are granting, so you don't, which means somebody who picks up your book, if you got a book with ELF content in it that's come from upstream of you, you do not have to, if you, somebody else then finds the book that this, I guess I should use some names here. If Heath creates a book that has ELF licensed content in it and it contains work from Jim upstream, and now Sarah comes and takes a look at my book, Heath's book, the right to Jim's material has passed through this book. And so when you see what is ELF licensed material, Sarah can then use that work without having to go back to Jim's work. That's what's going on here, right? So, okay, so Robert is saying, now what if I've already published certain content under the OGL? Now I want to use the same content, the parts I wrote, under ELF. Could a publisher do that? Role of Law answers, if you released that work under the OGL because it used other OGL content, then no. But if you just released under OGL and has no other OGL content, you could re-release with a new license. Interesting. Roll of Law says, if I ever finish Project Monolith, I'll probably release with both ELF license options and a custom bespoke license. Okay, database rights. Yeah, okay, so if you hereby grant any recipient the work containing the ELF license a right to use the original... Now, original ELF license content is the ELF license content that you have generated for your own work here. And any ELF license content specifically designated by you under the terms and conditions of this agreement. All right, so why was I wrong about that being a pass-through thing? Because this does specifically say the original ELF license content. Because what are you doing? When you may not only be using other content, but you may also be creating original ELF license content. C, database rights. Where the licensed rights include sui generis database rights that apply to your use of the ELF licensed content, this ELF license grants you the right to extract, reuse, reproduce, and use all of a substantial portion of the content of the database. And if you include all or substantial portion of the database contents in a database with which you have sui generis database rights, then the database in which you have sui generis database rights, but not its individual contents, shall constitute ELF licensed content. And I believe this all has to do with what is a published work, because that was something that Wizards of the Coast was trying to get around, that, oh, well, a published work, that can be something like a book, and that's what the OGL covers. But if you're going to put it on something like a database, if you're going to put it on something like a website, that's not a static publication anymore. That's a database, and that's something else. But here we're specifically talking about, well, hey, databases, websites, most websites today are basically databases, particularly ones that do things other than just display HTML. You can use this for. Hey, John. Good to see you. So limitations, D. Nothing in this ELF license constitutes or may be construed as permission to assert or imply that you are, or that your use of the ELF license content is connected with or sponsored, endorsed, or granted official status by the licensor or others designated to receive attribution hereunder. 2. Moral rights, such as the right of integrity, are not licensed under the ELF license, nor publicity, privacy, or other similar personality rights. However, to the extent possible, the licensor waives and agrees not to assert any such right held by the licensor to the limited extent necessary to allow you to exercise the licensed rights, but not otherwise. 3. To the extent possible, the licensor waives any right to collect royalties from you for the exercise of licensed rights and the use of the ELF licensed content, whether directly or through a collecting society under any voluntary or waivable statutory or compulsory licensing scheme. Hey, Moonswan. Good morning. Okay. Article 3, I guess. Required notice. The grant of this ELF license to you is expressly conditioned on you including the notice statements described in subsections A through C below in a reasonable manner based on the medium, means, and context in which you use the ELF license content. So A, so this is what you got to put in your book. ELF notice, the following statement designating the location of and terms of the ELF license. This product is licensed under the ELF license 1.0, located at location to be determined, and others. All warranties are disclaimed as set forth herein. B, attribution notice. A statement based on reasonable good faith efforts that identifies each licensor or creator of the ELF licensed content you used and others designated to receive attribution, including all upstream licensors of ELF content, which the work is based upon or derived from, which the work is based or derived from, in any reasonable manner. For the avoidance of doubt, both licensor and all parties similarly credited under licensor's attribution notice shall be included in your attribution notice unless otherwise reasonably indicated by such parties. 2, a statement indicating how you wish to be reasonably credited with respect to the adapted ELF content license by you under this ELF license, including by pseudonym or anonymously if designated. If your preferred attribution is a graphic, image, sound, virtual reality content, video content, or other form of content beyond pure text, you must include a pure text version of your attribution as well. You may include any licensor. You may attribute any licensor with the pure text version of the attribution, or an audio or visual rendition of that text at your discretion. If a licensor fails to include a pure text version of their preferred attribution, you may attribute them using a description of their preferred attribution. 4, you may adapt any attribution as reasonably required to provide accommodation to disabled individuals. 3, a statement indicating which, if any, elements of product identity have been licensed by you or by other licensors as original ELF content or designated ELF content. If this statement is omitted, it's considered a statement that no such elements are further licensed. So this is important right here. Let's go over here. Oh, my net cut out for a moment there. I'm back, right? I hope so. Micah says, as I was typing, was it on your end? As I was typing, the FARED system will be under as many licenses as offer protectable rights, though varying SRDs based on what each license types and ease of use. Currently, the ELF license is top pick, even though it is still only a draft presently. Okay, so you have to provide a statement. Okay, so you provide a statement if any elements of product identity, because elements of product identity are already protected. But if there is any of those things which are specifically being licensed to you or others as original ELF content or designated ELF content, if this statement is omitted, it's considered a statement that no such elements are further licensed. Okay, so deattribution, reattribution. So this I have questions about. Deattribution. If you receive a request from a licensor to remove the attribution to that licensor from your work, you must reasonably comply with that request. For clarity, reasonable compliance does not require the destruction of any already printed physical copies, nor for anyone to cease distribution of any of already printed physical copies. But what about digital copies? Like, so this would be something that I would want a lot of clarification about, because yes, it's very good that if you spend a whole bunch of money in inventory printing physical copies, you do not have to destroy them. They are ready. That's excellent. But you can still like put a lot of burden on somebody to make them adjust digital works. Like, how many different places are digital works available for sale? Once I get a final copy of my digital work, my final PDF, what is it that where am I going to put that up for sale? I might put that up on Drive-Thru RPG. I might put that up on my own website. I might make it available on Amazon. I might make that available in many different places. And then what happens if I not only have one PDF that's my final PDF, but I've got 5 or 6 or 10 that all have this person's attribution in it? And then I get a message from them saying, hey, I want you to remove my attribution. Don't worry about anything physical printed, but what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go through and make an entirely what accounts to a new edition or a new printing of your work, and possibly many works, and then go through all of the re-uploading process and everything else on all of these different things. So I would say, I would want to make that clear, that what does it mean to have reasonable compliance with a digital request when it's just digital? It's not really, because I think it would be reasonable to say, well, okay, I will certainly deattribute that when I next do another revision of that work. When I choose to go and do a new printing, or I'm going to be updating that work anyway, then I will also revise the attribution or deattribute you. But you can't force me to go through and do all of that work. I mean, what happens when you've got hundreds of different products that have a potential attribution in them across 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 different distribution channels? That's to me, that's not a reasonable. Micah says, that's a good point in terms of how often or how quickly it requires an update to attributions. Roll of Law says, that's an issue that occurred to me, but I think it's less of an issue with the elf license because people choose to release the work. But maybe I should add some text about reasonable times. Micah says, but if you don't change attributions, people have sued over issues that have risen before. And actually, I also wonder if this could be used maliciously, because we're about to look at reattribution as well. John says, is there an RPG that Roll of Law is developing or supporting with which the elf applies? Or is this an example license for people to use in their own products? Roll of Law says, this is basically created to be an option for everyone else. After starting the elf license, I did start a tabletop RPG project that may never reach fruition, but that's unrelated. So Micah says maybe something about 30 to 90 days, a year at most, because a lot of books have new edition for typo fixes or print runs each year. I mean, a lot of books, but not all of them. Example license, the Roll of Law is also developing an aforementioned Project Monolith. Yeah, because right here, okay, so deattribution. So deattribution, then reattribution. If you receive a request from a licensor to change the attribution to that licensor in your work, you must reasonably comply with that request and adapt the attribution to the new name, pseudonym, or anonymous as the case may be. For clarity, reasonable compliance does not require the destruction of already printed physical copies, nor for anyone to cease distribution of any already printed physical copies. Yeah, this seems like something that could be used maliciously to me. Because if you've got somebody's work and they end up not liking that you're something that you wrote with their elf content, they could tell you, hey, I want to be deattributed. And then did you it doesn't work with any of your physical products, but it does work with all of your digital stuff. So immediately go through your entire catalog, create new versions of all of your material, re-upload. Because sometimes when you're re-uploading things to different digital distribution sources, you got to go through a clearance, a time where they like look at and clear and revise. I believe that's the case with Amazon. I mean, it's not like just when you say, hey, I'm uploading this new file, it's immediately available on Amazon. Amazon's got to check it over. So there becomes a delay, right? If you are uploading a new digital file to Drive-Thru RPG, which I've been working with Drive-Thru Fiction, but then you've got to go and order a new physical proof if you're going to be selling it print on demand. And that print on that getting, so it holds in reserve. New version of the file is up. Now you must pay to get a new print on demand copy, and that can take several weeks while your product would not be available. And then as soon as your product goes back up and available again, the malicious person says, no, wait a minute, I want to be reattributed, and I want to be reattributed another way, and sends you all the way through this cycle again. So, yeah, this looks like something that could be maliciously used against somebody. I don't think it's reasonable once a PDF is out, once a product is out. I don't think that you should have to. I mean, it seems to me like you should put the attribution the way that person designated the attribution needed to be done when that product was published. It seems strange to make you go back and fight through all of your catalog in a potentially malicious way. Yes, he's here. He's here. Micah says, potentially, Heath, though someone could file a lawsuit or association affecting the perceived value of their IP. This gives you a way to put in the request without a lawsuit. So that's the deattribution thing that, like, listen. So my question is, this says, if you receive a request from a licensor to remove the attribution to that licensor from your work, you must reasonably comply with that request. So this is on a licensor by licensor basis. It's not saying that, hey, here's the orc licensed content that I just created, and now it's licensed under the terms of the elf license. Now it's licensed under the terms of the elf license. And if you want to use this, credit me as Heath Robinson. Okay, boom. And then I decide, you know what? I actually want to go by E.H. Robinson. So then I revise my book here, and I say, now I want to be credited as E.H. Robinson. But if somebody already has a copy of this text that says credit as Heath Robinson, nobody has to do anything unless I specifically contact them and say, hey, I noticed you're using my stuff in your work, and I've decided to change my name. So here's your notice to change my name in all of your products. I don't know. That seems weird to me. It seems like if I'm holding the license that says it's under these terms, having somebody else come back and force me to update all of my products is strange. Role of Law says the de-attribution, re-attribution is intended to solve name changes, but also to stand in place of moral rights issues. Yeah, Arun says if somebody changes the name of their company often and spams requests for new attributions. So Role of Law says if you license out your combat system under ELF, someone could use it for someone's morally objectionable, for something morally objectionable. Your remedy at that point is just take my name off that. Yeah, but see, if you think that I can just completely see that if somebody realizes that, hey, look, I've licensed this ELF content, and then somebody abided by all of the terms of that ELF content, and then they made a book that now I consider morally objectionable, and I'm like, I do not want that book to exist. How can I make sure that I try to make it as difficult as possible for them to sell their book? Send them a de-attribution license, then send them a re-attribution license or notification, and then send them another re-attribution notification, and then another one until they can't keep that up there. Like, so is it clear? Well, first of all, is it clear that if you ask for de-attribution from that publisher, that you cannot ask for a re-attribution? I'm de-attributing that. Now I'm re-attributing that. Is that clear? So, but on the other hand, that doesn't really work, because if they realize that, oh my God, I can't ask for de-attribution, but I can ask for re-attribution, because I can go through an infinite cycle of re-attributions. Perhaps de-attribution stops that cycle, but re-attribution does not. I don't know. That just seems like something that would be abused. That the means already exists in the law, but varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Lawsuits happen when somebody doesn't agree to the timetable. Most just update with the new edition. So if this is something about moral rights, that should we put in here that the only thing that you can do is request de-attribution? If you think there's somebody who's using your work in something morally objectionable. But I mean, to me, isn't it the case that if you put something out under an open license, I mean, you can't control how it's used. And if you are afraid that somebody will do something, will use this material in a way that is morally objectionable to you, you do specifically have the option to be credited anonymously. So if you're like, hey, I want to put this out to the community, but I'm afraid people are going to do something that I just consider horrifically morally objectionable, and then I don't want my name on it, so I can just be anonymous. Yeah, it seems like if you're I don't know. It seems like it's easier. We talked about all of that with Ryan Dancy when we had the discussions with Ryan Dancy about that, the moral aspect of this, because it seemed like Wizards of the Coast wanted that. that the easiest thing, that the easiest way to handle that situation, if somebody, if I write something and I give away the combat system, and then somebody else uses that in something else and they attribute the combat system to me, and then some news outlet runs up to me later, next year and goes, "Oh my God, Heath, you're an awful person. I just read this other book that's published by another company that you didn't even know about. That is just, I think that according to the reporter's morality, is just completely objectionable and wrong. And your name's in it. How dare you?" That my defense is, I licensed that under an open license. I have absolutely no connection whatsoever to that other company or their publication. Can the reporter come back? Yeah, but it says you can request deattribution. By not requesting deattribution, you must be okay with your name being in it. Why didn't you request deattribution of your that work? Well, I didn't know the work was out there, or whatever, or Let's see. Roll of Law says, yeah, it's a problem. I'll think about it in terms of how to prevent abuses. Yeah, I think we do need to think about that. BGD says, on the issue of deattribution and reattribution, the license could simply limit the number of cycles to 1. R. Rune says, can you do this in reverse too? Like make a compelling combat system and then change your name to all X players suck. And then people have to, that's a good question too. Oh, that's a good question. That's a fantastic. That's a fantastic question. Can you decide to be attributed, like if the deattribution isn't for your entire work? Like, okay, I've decided that everybody who is licensing this, I will no longer be attributed in it. If it is publisher by publisher, and you decide that that publisher does suck, like Arun is talking about, can I now decide that my attribution for that work for that publisher is something something offensive to that company or some other group of people, and require that they change that attribution in their work? Micah says, I think that's reasonable, Heath. If you deattribute, you cannot reattribute. That separates creator company name changes versus moral disagreements, etc. Micah says, or to one paranoid of time, BGD, such as once every 5 years. This is exactly right. Roll of Law says, a ton of people want credit right up until someone releases something like Racism the Game, and then specifically want credit on everything but that. And that I can guarantee the media and in general the public will not understand the open licensing agreement. So then what do you do? So this is supposed to be putting in here deattribution. I mean, so why not just say that the only remedy is deattribution? And this deattribution can only be used in the cases of the separation of moral rights. If that's the situation, like your only recourse is to request deattribution from the publisher. That's the only thing you can do. You have to notify that person, and then at some point they have to deattribute. And then why not just skip the reattribution change? Why just this seems like an endless cycle. That if that's the thing, the moral rights say your only restitution for moral rights, if you think that somebody's doing something objectionable you don't want to be associated with, your only recourse is to deattribute yourself, request deattribution. there's no endless string of reattributions, spam requests for everybody. But isn't that a risk of an open license? Rule of Law says, and as a lawyer, neither would the Law Society, which could create professional consequences for me if my name was attributed to something horrific, for example. So the Law Society also wouldn't understand open licenses right there. So wouldn't that mean that you're basically advising people to not use one? Because I'd like to open license this. Well, what happens if somebody uses this for something that you or somebody else finds morally objectionable? Well, then you say that you would suffer professional consequences. So that would say that so don't put anything out under an open license, right? So that would be that, right? You shouldn't do that because the public, the media, and even the Law Society won't understand the situation of an open license. Arun says Hasbro changing their name to Buy More D&D right now, so everyone has to add it to their books, or just their attribution. Well, it says if you receive a request from a licensor to change the attribution to the licensor in your work, you must reasonably comply with the request to adapt the attribution to the new name, pseudonym, or anonymous, as the case may be. Rule of Law says, appreciate the discussion, helping to highlight new issues. I don't want the de-attribution, reattribution to be a backdoor to unlicense. Well, we do have great discussions around here. The Morning Grind is a great crew for just these kinds of discussions. We deep dive here and on Table Talk. Arun says, well, I don't know how practical it would be to try and enforce it, but I think you can force people to accept your name change as a funny idea and hold them captive like that. Yeah, one possible solution in a situation like that, if somebody tries to say, hey, I'm changing my name to something that's offensive and terrible as far as your work goes, you can say, then I'm just choosing, therefore, to deattribute it. That if you're faced with something that you think is morally wrong, is the idea, some kind of moral phrase right here. So if the problem is that if the problem we're trying to address is that I don't want it, if I find somebody who's published something that I'm not morally okay with, I want to be able to deattribute. I can't force somebody to put something in their book they're not morally okay with. If I try to, then their recourse is also just to deattribute my work. Jappert says, not a lawyer, but in most Europe, you cannot waive moral rights, as far as I know. Something to note. Micah says, one way around this might perhaps be what Paizo does with requiring a digital copy of anything made with their infinite license or community content license, except for going to. Micah says, print for the first, going to print for the first edition. Rule of Law says that solution kind of kills the usefulness of open licenses generally, but I can add some sort of limitation like reasonable frequency, etc. Well, no, Robert, that's already taken care of because it says for clarity, reasonable compliance does not require the destruction of any already printed physical copies, nor for anyone to cease distribution of any already printed physical copies. So that's already covered. But what's not covered is an infinite cycle and cost and time associated with updating digital products. All right, attribution valid notwithstanding variation. So long as the above elements in 3A, 3B are included, an attribution intent to comply with the requirements of another license will be deemed to also comply with this license. Sample notice. Okay, so we got a sample notice here. By way of example only, the following notice would comply with the requirements of the ELF license. So ELF notice. This product is licensed under the ELF license located at TBD. All warranties are disclaimed and set forth herein. Attribution. The product is compatible with and based on the following ELF content. Title of work, copyright notice, author credit information, title of additional work, copyright notice, author credit information, etc. If you use our designated ELF content, please also credit us as follows: title of this work, copyright notice, your author credit information. Product identity. Product identity elements in this product include, but may not be limited to, Hamlet, the Rotten State of Denmark, the Order of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So these are product identity elements in this book include, but are not limited to, because we have a definition for what product identity is. And then expressly designated content. The following elements are owned by the licensor and are offered to all recipients as designated ELF content, pages 3 to 6. The entire chapter entitled Bestiary, the content on page 17, beginning with and including the header Count Trotter, and concluding before and not including the heading Baron Wheatley. This content specifically includes product identified as designated ELF content. R. Rune says, on a more serious note, I could see this becoming a real issue if some authors come out as trans and make name changes, which is probably more frequent today than historically. This license stuff melts my brain. And Micah says, and that's part of why reattribution is desired. Yeah, that's a good point. We do have situations a lot today, with trans issues where people completely change their name. And then now it would still be on them. So am I right? Am I right in saying that, therefore, like if you write a book and you license it under ORC or some passage of it under ORC, you have no idea how many books there are in existence after that that license you, that are licensing your material, because you're not required to register any type of material. You're not required to register your ORC material anywhere. You're not required to tell someone that you are licensing their material, because it's an open license. You don't have to tell anybody that you did it. You don't have to write to their permission. You don't have anything. So you've got this work. So if I write it, right, and I write it out and I put it out in the world, I have no idea how many books out there use that material. I have no idea how many people are my licensors. Then I become trans, and now I'm Heather Robinson. Okay, so then I change my name to Heather. I have to specifically request, I have to identify, I have to go and find. I guess what I would do is two things then. I would need to republish my own work and say, now I'm republishing my own work under a new license that says, attribute me as Heather Robinson. But if somebody finds a PDF of the previous work, they don't know the thing has been updated. All they know is that they've got this PDF in their hand that says, I can use this particular work and credit it as Heath Robinson. All right, because that you can't unopen license. You can't unopen license. So I cannot make that work of mine invalid that says credit me as Heath Robinson. Okay, so I would probably republish my work that says credit me as Heather Robinson. And then if I want other people to change my credit notice, I would have to go and that would be on me. I would have to go and find everybody who is licensing my work and then give them a specific reattribution request that I'm now Heather Robinson, right? And then if I detransition, right, then I would have to do it again and submit all the requests that I'm detransitioning now. Please go back to Heath or whatever, right? Jerry says, add to text. The original rights holder is to be held blameless for any usage by subsequent users of material. Well, until you detransition. Like, detransitioning is a thing. I mean, people do detransition. So Arun says it being viable for a gender change is part of the reason for reattribution. I'm not John Smith. I'm now Julia Smith. But that'd normally be a one-off change and not repeated. Normally, but not always. Sophia Campbell is blessed that IDW changed credits for all her work after transitioning her name without being forced to do so for any reprints and works after the name change. A lot of companies do not do that. Like, how would you know? I mean, maybe if you know, but I mean, I'm not following. Like, if I find a book and I license it, I mean, I can license the material and follow the attribution. That doesn't mean that I will be following the author's personal life to determine, if they're transitioning or something. Micah says, yes, the licensor would have to tell you, which means they have to know you're using their work in the first place. If neither of you know about the other, no one knows an update may be desired. Companies that want to make the trans community pleased would likely put out an email when they receive reattribution requests to those that purchased earlier versions. Companies that want to make the trans community pleased would likely put out an email when they receive attribution requests to those that purchased earlier versions. You're talking about to their customers. You're like saying that hey, I just want to let you know that this book that you bought last year or 2 years or 3 years ago, one of the people who had licensed material is changed gender, and so there is an updated version of the book for you. I mean, you could update. So, I mean, sometimes you do that digitally, but if you do that like physically, I mean, probably so. Please buy this new version of the book that has the updated name in it. Companies starting them and merging them are a good reason to reattribute works. Maybe the artist is starting a studio, but 2 smaller studios are joining forces. Yeah, Drive-Thru RPG does that. I mean, you can do that with sometimes, yeah. The hold blameless thing isn't going to help if your name is getting blasted by the media. So that would be it. That would be an argument to just not open license anything, right? If you're afraid that somebody could use this material in something that is going to get you blasted, because that's not a legal thing, right? I mean, that's not a legal thing. We're not talking about. I mean, the license is mainly about legal stuff, right? I mean, or it is about legal stuff. If how people respond to you on social media, how people treat you on social media, the ethics of journalism. It's like you say, a journalist is not going to understand a open license. I mean, if a journalist sees that, hey, I don't really like X, and man, this other person has is credited in there, let's go attack X. I mean, you would hope that media personalities and journalists and such would understand something like an open license, but they're probably not. But that's not a legal thing. That's a societal issue, and how we handle things on social media and how we assign blame and things like that. Yeah, because you could be held blameless in a legal sense in certain ways because of an open license. But yeah, if you just get blasted, then whatever. Micah says, exactly. I've made 4 companies before, alone or with others. I retained my IP. Nebus says, for what it's worth, detransitioning happens only about 2 to 3% of all transitioners, and trans people only make up about 2 to 3% of all people, so it would be supremely uncommon. But it was brought up that was one of the things that they were thinking about, right? Is transitioning. So Role of Law says, in general, it would be up to the author. I guess the issue here is that if there's a way to not have the loophole, then we could try to not have the loophole. In general, it would be up to the original author to find the works downstream. Arun says, yeah, I don't think it would become a spam issue, but given some of the pro-anti sentiments, I could see this becoming a sticky situation. Role of Law says, which will mostly happen if this works become popular. if the work only, I guess this is if you know this has happened. This will mostly happen when those works are popular. The works that get like 18 sales probably won't come to anybody's attention. Right. We're talking because it was brought up in this term right up here. So the reason we're talking about this, you're wondering what this conversation is about right here, is that the ELF license, this draft of the ELF license, is specifically talking about receiving a request. What happens if you receive a request from a licensor to change the attribution of your licensed work? You must reasonably comply with that request and adapt to the attribution of the new name, pseudonym, or anonymous, as the case may be. So we've been talking about a lot of different potential loopholes that can be used here, potentially, and in some cases, potentially maliciously against somebody for deattribution and reattribution. And it was brought up that thinking about trans issues was one of the reasons that people might want to send notifications for reattribution. That's what was good. So if you're just tuning in and wondering what we were talking about, that's why. Arun says, I think I would just go with his suggestion of asking to be credited anonymously, LOL. Leave me out of anything, leave me off of anything of people making my stuff. Robert says, I work in politics, so if I published under ELF and I used other open content to make my game, I could easily see the other publishers being pressured to deattribute from my game. That's good to see you, Mary Jane. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Hey, and Nevis, I would say, so I've seen some new names in here. Let's do a toast to all the new names that are here in the chat. Here's to you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody who is new, whether you posted in the chat or not. But everybody who's new here, here's to you. I do the morning grind every morning, 9:30 a.m. Central. If you're new here, 9:30 a.m. Central, we are here at the morning grind every day. Like I didn't do it on Thanksgiving Day, but basically every day, 7 days a week, I'm here at the morning grind at 9:30 a.m. Central. So if you are looking for a place to hang out and talk about geek stuff, this is what we do. Roll of Law says, wouldn't be hard to include some timeline for digital works, although I think reasonable functions here, but it's also a limit of frequency re-deattribution. Let's see. So warranties. Let's just keep going here. I'll catch if there are other things to say on this, definitely say them, and we'll catch up in the comments. But let me go on to warranty and limits of liability. We're getting toward the end of this. Licensor licenses the ELF content as is and as available and makes no representations or warranties of any kind concerning the ELF content, whether express, implied, statutory, or other. This includes, without limitation, warranties of title, merchantability, fitness for particular purpose, non-infringement, absence of latent or other defects, accuracy, or the presence or absence of errors, whether or not known or discoverable, where disclaimers of warranty are not allowed in full or in part. This disclaimer may not apply to you. To the extent possible, in no event will the licensor be liable to you on any legal theory, including without limitation negligence, or otherwise for any direct, special, indirect, incidental, consequential, punitive, exemplary, or other losses, costs, expenses, or damages arising out of the ELF license or use of the ELF content, even if the licensor has been advised of the possibility of such losses, costs, expenses, or damages. Where a limitation of liability is not allowed in full or in part, this limitation may not be applied to you. The disclaimer of warranties or limitations of liability provided shall be interpreted in a manner that, to the extent possible, most closely approximates an absolute disclaimer and waiver of all liability. As I was sitting here reading that, in the space of the media is not going to understand what an open license is if your name is being dragged through the mud. And not on the legal side of things, but just on the social media side of things and journalistic side of things. and somebody says, hey, somebody's published a really terrible thing and it uses some of your material, we're saying it's not going to be enough to say, well, that was done under an open license and I have no relationship with that publisher and no relationship with that book, and I do not condone it in any way. We seem to be saying here that will not be enough to stop the damage to your name. So, but will it be enough if you just say, oh, so if you say that statement, that material is published under an open license, I have no relationship with that publisher, no relationship with that publication, I do not condone that book, and by the way, I am sending them a notification right now to please deattribute my name from that material. Wouldn't the next step the media go, but they're still using your material? They're still using your material. I mean, I don't know how we get around this without just better social media, which is not going to happen, right? Oh, this is also, so Robert says, given that it appears the deattribution clause would be a major disincentive from widespread adoption if the license because of its stands as a downstream risk. Yeah. So you don't have to, but as far as downstream, you don't have to do anything else. If A licenses to B, who licenses to C, licenses to D, and then A changes their name, A has to inform B, C, and D. Right. Rule of law. I know this is not, yeah. So, but we're dealing with two separate things. This isn't a media clause. The clause is you don't get to sue the person if you used ELF content. Right. I know this is not. I was going back to the. This is legal, right? I was going back to the idea of deattribution because of moral rights or some kind of moral objection. Right. We can handle all of these things in here. This is a legal document, so this is the legal warranty and limitation of liabilities. What people do in the public sphere is something completely different that you can't control with a license, right? Yeah. So rule of law says, yeah, I think the deattribution, I think, would provide a better defense to the media. They're still using your material. There's no ability to stop them. But yeah, there's no ability to stop them. But we already said that they don't understand open licenses. There's no ability to stop them. But yeah, it still provides you a remedy. Also, just for the folks who have a personal moral objection. There's no ability to stop them. That when you say that, they go, oh, because it's an open license. But the reason that we had a problem in the beginning is because we said these people were not going to understand open licenses. Micah says, I mean, they're still using your material, was why WotC couldn't stop the book of erotic fantasy, which we have looked at on this channel on the Morning Grind, but could make sure it didn't say that it was 3.x compatible. It does not have, so that we went through all of that. Or maybe I had that book in digital copy. I don't think I had a physical copy of that. But it did not have the D20 trademark logo on it, right? It had no D20 trademark logo. Because that was the difference. That was the difference. That was the OGL versus the D20 trademark. Robert Dancy said he would come back and talk to me about the D20 trademark logo specifically. He said that we haven't been able to get back together on it. I would love to host him again on Table Talk one night, because he said that the D20 trademark license itself was just as interesting a story as the OGL was, but at the time everybody was focused on the OGL. Understandably. But I would love to have him get back to talk about just the D20 license. Let's go. Let's see. How much more have we got here? Okay. So I'm going to come back to comments. But let's go to other terms and conditions, termination and remedies. Your license to use the ELF licensed content will terminate automatically if you fail to comply with the terms and conditions of this ELF license. Your license will be reinstated, effective as of the date of termination, if you cure such violation on a going forward basis, without the obligation to destroy inventory on hand, within 60 days of your discovery of the violation, or if the licensor waives such violation in writing. No such termination shall affect, limit, or disrupt the rights of any licensor or downstream license of any ELF licensed content under any ELF license. Only the licensor and licensee's upstream licensors under this ELF license, which you deem to be in privity herewith, may bring enforcement action against you hereunder. So you can't go, hey, wait a minute, that guy over there, I think is in violation of that person. It's got to be the person who's notices. This constitutes a limitation on licensor remedies with respect to the license grant in the ELF license content hereunder. However, this ELF license neither limits licensor remedies in any way with respect to the licensor's product identity, nor does it limit licensors' rights to offer the ELF license content or any other content under separate terms or conditions. B. Modifications. The ELF license may not be amended, superseded, modified, updated, repealed, revoked, or deauthorized. Neither you nor licensor may modify the terms of this ELF license, however. You may enter into a separate agreement of your own, provided such agreement does not seek to modify the terms thereof. This ELF license does not and shall not be interpreted to reduce, limit, restrict, or impose conditions or any use of the ELF content that could lawfully be made without permission under the ELF license. To the extent possible, if any provision of the ELF license is deemed unenforceable, it shall be automatically reformed to the minimum extent necessary to make it unenforceable. If the provision cannot be reformed, it shall be severed from this ELF license without affecting the enforceability of the remaining terms and conditions. This is the severability clause. No terms or conditions of this ELF license will be waived, and no failure to comply consented to unless expressly agreed to by the licensor. Nothing in this ELF license constitutes or may be interpreted as a limitation thereon or waiver of any privileges and immunities that apply to the licensor to you, including the legal processes of the jurisdiction or authority. C. Construction. This license is published simultaneously with an FAQ document. The FAQ document is intended to provide a general indication of the draft's intentions in interpreting the ELF license in the event of the dispute. The FAQ is intended to be admissible to and usable by any adjudicating body for such purpose. The ELF license may be translated into other languages. You and the licensor agree that if there's any conflict between the ELF license, the FAQ, and any such translated version, the English language ELF license shall control. The current version 1.0 of the ELF FAQ is only intended to be admissible to explain the current version of the ELF 1.0 license, and no subsequent FAQ shall be admissible to explain version 1.0, which we don't have yet. We looked at the AXE, the ORC FAQ, but I don't think I have, if it's out, I don't know, the ELF FAQ. We could totally look at that. Also, okay, so wait a minute. So let's think about this situation, going back to the moral situation. What if it went the other way? What do we do if this situation goes the other way? What if we got a situation where you've licensed some material through the ELF, or in this case, the ELF in this case, and so you've got this person's name in your book according to the attribution that they are supposed to be doing. And then 5 years later, they do something that you consider morally objectionable. And now you've got that person's name in your book. Seems to me that the situation is tough cookies. That, well, yep, when you credit somebody, that person may do something, write something, say something, do something thereafter that you find morally objectionable. But it doesn't matter. You license the material, and in accordance, you have their name in their book. But then the media comes to you and says, hey, isn't this person who's in your book here this just awful person who said X, Y, and Z? Why is this person in your book? We're saying they don't understand open licenses. I mean, the answer would be, I licensed that material many years ago under an open license, and I'm required to attribute them in my book according to the way that they are attributed. But we said that that's not something that the media is going to understand. Under a license agreement, you have to have this in your book. Why do you just not get rid of it out of this book? Can you de-attribute? If you can de-attribute, like if you say, listen, man, this person did something terrible, I'm going to de-attribute them from my book. I'm going to keep their material. So keeping their material, but then not attributing them would be a violation of this license, right? You couldn't do that. But if that person can make you de-attribute your book because they think that your book is saying something they don't like, should you be able to de-attribute them from your book if they start doing things that you don't like? Is that a two-way street, or should it be a two-way street? Because what would actually happen there in that case, I think, is that everybody would not attribute anybody. That's what would happen. Robert says, right. So as a publisher, I'd want to avoid that headache altogether if I was looking to the best license with an ecosystem of open content. Using other people's content suddenly carries some risk. Rule of law. The flip side is that I had a lot of creators saying they didn't want a license that would require their name on Pedophilia the game. Well, but so this is exactly the reverse situation right here. If I find out, if I'm using if Jim writes a book that has some orc content, and then I use that material, some elf content, and then I use that, and it says credit Jimbo. All right, so I credit Jimbo, and then 3 years later, Jimbo releases Pedophilia the game as a completely different product. But then people are like, "Oh my God, isn't that Jimbo guy so absolutely terrible?" Like, yeah, that Jimbo guy sounds utterly terrible. Now his name's in my book, and now the media wants to know, oh my God, what is all his Jimbo worked on? His name's in my book. What do I do then? How do I get rid of somebody's name that's in my book who I licensed material from and then did something morally terrible 5 years later? What do I do about that? Jimbo can make me do something. In that case, Jimbo could make me do something, because Jimbo could make me reattribute my work. If I do something later, Jimbo could make me reattribute my work. If Jimbo does something, I can't do something to my own work? Would the media back down if they knew you cannot cancel downstream? I think it would be difficult to manage the media. I think it wouldn't be difficult. Rule of law says, I think it wouldn't be difficult to manage the media with the step of we are sending them a notice immediately to deattribute. I cannot promise the license will end up perfect, because that doesn't exist, but I'll try to put an anti-abuse thing that we can't use the reattribution thing as a weapon. I'm too much. Mary Jane says, I'm too much of a noob to get all of this, but name changing is always sticky if you have created things under a certain name and then have to change it. Robert says, my comment for the draft then would be to scrub that provision together with the prevalence of Twitter mobs and cancel culture, as there's always a way to report content to the original publishers. For action, it will be abused even if the license tries to prevent that. Rule of law says I'd probably put in something like no more than one D or reattribution per work per 3 years. Now, Micah says that isn't something you want to eliminate, because then you ignore someone asking someone their remedy is immediately to sue you instead of give you the update. So it says that may be true, but plenty of lawyers who see a chance for publicity and an easy case may take it for a low cost, and then fans may pay those costs. TSL Frumman says, exactly. Not everyone is happy that they share credits with Harvey Weinstein, but a contract usually doesn't care. Yeah, this is a great example. Right. So what directions does that happen? Now, wait a minute. Now, all of a sudden, I've got to credit Harvey here in my work. I'm contractually obligated to. Can I get rid of that credit? No, because the contract doesn't care, right? Rule of law says that's correct. The de-attribution, reattribution power rests with the license holder. The remedy for the downstream is to remove the content. The remedy for the downstream is to remove the content. Mary Jane says, Harvey is gross, but it's true they can't just take his name off of stuff. What a mess. Right. I know. This is all of a sudden, I was like, oh, wow, this is going to go so well. Maybe we have the elf license here. I was expecting this to go so well. I wasn't expecting to all of a sudden get into this, but it is like, oh my God, this is a mess. I mean, this whole situation that we're all talking about right here. It's like, oh my God, what do you do? In fact, now it's making me think, like, just do I even want to deal with any of this? Is it better then to just have your own? The OGL and everything worked so well for so long. And I mean, arguably it is still working because it's not like it's still there, but everything was working so well until Wizards of the Coast did that to our community. And now here we are. You get rid of their name by removing their work and putting out a new version without it. That's what you do. Yes. Which can be extremely difficult and possibly crippling. Right. Mike says, it's still a draft and reasonable may need to be defined for time between exchanges, but laws already exist for why deauthorization requests are better for licensors than potential lawsuits. Well, see, if that would be one thing, like if it's just deattribution, you can receive a deattribution request, and that is that's their remedy. I mean, I like that. And then you can't re-attribute after you've deattributed. Deattribution. That's just it. You're done. If you send that notification once, then in some reasonable amount of time, like when the next digital edition is put out, then it will be updated, and then that's it. Roll of Law says that often in Hollywood you can remove an attribution, hence the Smithy thing. Well, maybe. Roll of Thought says, but you can only Smithy yourself. We'll have to see that. I know what that is. BGD says the remedy for the downstream would simply be to add a disclaimer to new versions of the published works. Roll of Law says, yes, exactly. That's how you get to remove the attribution you don't want for somebody else's work. They aren't going to provide a provision for just, I want their work, no credit. Exactly. You're not going to, no one, if you did that, no one would credit. But that means you cannot get that morally objectionable person off that work. TSL Frontman says, unfortunately, Harveys aren't just mythical, big, bad, evil guys on another continent. They run small projects as well. Zero the Blade says, makes you question if you even want to release a tabletop RPG at this point. Yeah. Or that, I mean, it's not releasing a tabletop RPG, but it's releasing a tabletop RPG with open material. Arun says, I personally think the whole OGL culture thing is a little silly. I get how it happens, but it seems like it was a marketing gimmick that got internalized as people's values. Well, it was much more than a marketing gimmick. It was a brilliant marketing strategy. It was a brilliant marketing strategy that catapulted D&D from basically bankrupt to everything that it is today. So I would not use the word gimmick at all. I would say massively successful marketing strategy that was based on the values of open source software that already existed. So yeah, it definitely, there was a value element to this because it played on existing values that people had and that people did continue to internalize. So the Smithy thing is when you want to remove your own attribution, and has existed for a while. It was even used in comic books specifically. Oh, so if you're on one of Harvey's movies and you don't want to be, you can remove yourself. So okay, so that makes sense. Runkle says you can Smithy it, but that's like abandoning your baby. Yeah, Roll of Law says not a gimmick. every first-party creator should be absolutely hoping for a downstream creator community. Right, right, exactly. And we talked about a profitable downstream community so your license has to create value for your downstream. So you're right. If you're a first-party creator, you want to create a vast, successful ecosystem of downstream creators who are also capable of being successful and capable of making money. The license already has another clause that mentions you cannot claim association except the material and credit that you licensed from. You cannot claim that a creator condones your downstream works. Correct. OGL led to widespread SRD adoption, which was a success that became a problem when Wizards threatened revocation or deauthorization from the OGL, which is how do we navigate from here? Well, this is a bit more different than just homebrew. If WotC doesn't allow homebrew, D&D will stagnate as they are bound to tradition. Then the tree withers and dies. This is about more than homebrew. This is about publication, though, right? James says, I feel like we're making a bigger deal out of this than is realistic. If you use open license, you're instantly imperiling yourself at the mercy of morally questionable people using your material. All that needs to be done is declare that you have no association with them and denounce their views. That was Ryan Dancy's position. That was Ryan Dancy's answer to that directly. Roll of Law says, yeah, if I'm a first-party creator, I want the existence of Kobold Press, etc. for my work. People making good money working content for the game. Okay, well, we typically go, if you're new here, we typically go for an hour and a half in the morning. So we have gone for an hour and 46 minutes. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, Ian. Roll of Law, check out the Roll of Law channel. So Roll of Law, Ian, the creator of this drafted license, has been with us. So please check out his channel as well. And thank you so much, Ian, for actually being here on the channel. This has been fantastic. It was great to have you here. We'll get together for a discussion on Table Talk. If you're here, though, please do hit the like button and the subscribe. We do the morning grind every morning at 9:30 a.m. We're talking about something in tabletop gaming or the Geekverse like this. So 9:30 a.m. Central Time every morning, we do the morning grind. Please, I would love to have you as part of this community. It's a fantastic community. These kinds of discussions that we had today are the kinds of discussions that we have basically every morning on some type of topic. And I'm looking forward to doing a whole lot more morning grinds and with you and everybody else. And hey, if you watch this later on replay, I really appreciate your being here on replay as well. I will be reading comments. So if you've got a comment or something that we missed or something that extends the conversation, please do put it down in the comment section when you're watching on replay, because I'll see it. And sometimes we talk about people's comments on the next day if it was something that was brought up that was particularly insightful that we need to check out and we need to take a look at. So that's all important. We think we've got a great community here, a fantastic community, and I really appreciate every one of you. So please do like and subscribe. Oh, hey, let me give you the Discord server. If you want to be part of the Ravenkeep Discord server, here's the link to the Ravenkeep Discord server as well. Let me make sure that one's linked is live. Here you go. I know this link right here will never expire. So here we go. Discord server link. The other one should work, but here's a one that shouldn't expire. So if you're here and you see it, would love to have you as part of the Ravenkeep Discord server as well. We've got several different channels that I do over here. And so the Ravenkeep Discord server is where it all gets mixed together so that you can choose which ones, you can choose which things to follow and things. But if you want to see other things that are going on, the Ravenkeep Discord server is a fantastic place for it. And yes, and there's even a preview on the Discord server for my story. TSL Frontman was a channel member, so he's got the entire story. But the Trial of St. Gabriel, the dark story of the Christmas Massacre, check out the Theophany channel, and you can get a preview of that book and also see the trailer for that book as well. So, all right. I say, right. I think this is a great way to end. Micah says, as stated before, the ELF license is still in draft. So this is still a draft. Feedback requested. So we've been providing feedback, as you can see. But I do think that Roll of Law has a good license in progress. I think so, too. And I think it's better than the other options, just needs further tweaking. Yeah, I think that for the major things that we were talking about with the orc and the differentiation between licensed material and your reserved material, the ELF is much better in that regard. The ELF is doing, I think, what it should be doing. So I remain a big fan of the ELF. It's in draft. Feedback, provide feedback here, provide feedback to Ian. And let's try to make this the best license it can possibly be and the one that does what it needs to do. and that we all can use because we're creators here as well. Okay. All right. I got to get out of here because I got things to do. Everybody, have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to watch Napoleon tonight. I'll see you tomorrow on the morning grind. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Be creative, be constructive, and grind on. Later.